Something historic has happened in the United Kingdom in our response to refugees. At the beginning of the crisis in Ukraine, the UK was a little bit slow compared to some of the Ukrainian neighbors. So we were slower than Romania and Moldova and Poland. And so I asked civil society and faith groups if they would volunteer to be hosts for Ukrainian refugees before there was an official program. And around 29,000 people said they would help. And so then we could go to the government and say, look, the society wants to welcome people. Let's work together. And then I'm sure many other agencies did similar things. But now, through the Homes for Ukraine scheme, of which I'm an advisor for the government on, 117,100 Ukrainian refugees are now living with host families. This is the most we've ever done like this, hosting people in homes. We've never done anything like this in recent history. The closest equivalent would be in 1939, around 10,000 Jewish children were given sanctuary in people's homes through something called the Kindertransport. And we look back as a nation on this as one of our most defining acts of compassion in our history. And we've done even more than that in the last year. Most of the Ukrainian refugees have come are women and children, and most of the hosts that are looking after them, this is the first time they've ever done anything for refugees. So it was a really big step. And Sanctuary Foundation, we have four main priorities to our work. They all begin with W because I have a church background and we like things to alliterate. So the first is welcome. And we try to encourage more hosts to come forward, more social integration to take place. We created a little book called Privyet, which was full of lovely little information for Ukrainian children. It's got really nice little messages. Anush Shankar was one of the people that did that. I'll tell you the other three W. Work is the second. Many, particularly of our Ukrainian refugee friends, are significant business people, and they can't work in those fields anymore, either because they're now solo parenting and they don't have grandparents or their spouses around to be able to look after children. So they're doing it on their own and they're learning English. So they're working in nail bars or in shops rather than at the kind of managerial level or entrepreneurial level they're used to. So we're trying to provide ways for people to work in meaningful work. We've partnered with organizations like Salesforce to provide a little push and encouragement to help people gain the skills they need to be competitive in the UK marketplace. The third area is worthwhile housing. Most of the problems we have at the moment about receiving refugees is based on a lack of housing. There's a huge challenge right now with refugees and asylum seekers in hotels. It's costing the government between £6 and £7 million a day to keep people in hotels. And no one thinks hotels is a good place for families to rebuild their lives. Even those that are being hosted in people's homes, we said 117,000, that hosting arrangement can't last forever. And so people are going to need to rent their own houses. And there's a huge shortage of available, affordable housing. So we're working on some projects to try and generate new housing. And we think that new housing shouldn't be just for refugees. It needs to help the existing communities as well. And so there's a project just we're working on down the road that tries to help more key worker housing, whether that's nurses and doctors and teachers who can't afford to live in the area where they work. So we're trying to help with that. And the fourth W is welfare. Moving countries is pretty traumatic. Moving countries because you're fleeing war and terror is incredibly traumatic. And so there's a whole host of mental health challenges around those that have come. But there's very little available provision in the United Kingdom, even for existing Brits, let alone those that have the cultural awareness of these different countries that people are coming from. So those are our four Ws. I would say there's been a mixed reaction from the UK Asian community around the issue of refugees and asylum. It's interesting that in our government, those that have been most outspoken at stopping asylum seekers come to the UK have been from an Asian background. But I've met many people of goodwill and huge compassion who empathize with the refugee and asylum story. I'm an immigrant to this country through my parents. Most of our Asian diaspora are immigrants, and they haven't forgotten their history and realize how hard it is to move. And so they've been very compassionate. For example, Tata Consumer Goods have really helped us. That's a big Indian company. We did some Christmas gift boxes and some Easter gift boxes for refugees, and they supplied thousands of boxes of Tetley's tea or Good Earth tea, just as a sign of welcome. So we really have been encouraged by those who have been willing to offer hospitality. I think there's lots of things we can do, and it starts with the conversations that we have. At work, sometimes people will use very derogatory language about newcomers to the country, about refugees and asylum seekers. And I think becoming well informed so that we can push back against negative stereotypes and xenophobia, that's really important. I think another thing that we could do is there is still a huge need for more hosts for Ukrainian refugees, some that are here and need rehosting because their original host can't look after them anymore. Maybe they're moving house, maybe they've got building work. And so we still need more hosts to come forward. Most of the hosts that I've seen haven't been from the immigrant communities. They've often been from long-standing British families, and we'd love to see more diversity in the hosting. There are some lovely counterexamples, but the majority are not from diaspora communities. I think the third thing is if you have a business and you have interest in supporting refugees, there are lots of ways we do that. As I said, we've been doing these little gift boxes as a token of welcome, and that really matters to people. So many Ukrainians told me just seeing a flag outside someone's house means they feel like they're welcome in the country. Receiving a box of goodies from a company helps them to know that they belong here. It's a little bit of support and encouragement for them. Also, many businesses might consider working with us to find meaningful employment. There's an Indian pharmaceutical company actually that's close to me in Maidenhead. And 2 weeks ago, we ran a special open day to show some job opportunities for Ukrainians. And we made it very accessible to Ukrainians by having making sure that we had a translator present, making sure that we did it at a time that made sense for people. So, there are lots of ways that companies, individuals can play a role. Just finally, I know many of my Asian friends are in property, and there's a huge need for more benevolent landlords to come forward. I've met too many landlords who have said they won't rent to refugees because they don't want to rent to people on universal credit. And so it's another stereotype, another stigma. But my family, when they arrived in the country, they faced all sorts of opposition because of the color of their skin. I think we as diaspora communities need to learn from the difficulties our families had and offer a warm welcome. And that could be allowing someone to rent your home or rent a property that you have so that they can have somewhere safe to live. Well, interestingly, I think they gave me the OBE because of the refugee work, even though I've been doing the fostering work for a long time. Either way, I was very surprised to receive it. It's interesting. I was talking to my wife. My wife was born in England, and her family are from Wales, and I felt like the OBE somehow was a way of communicating to me that I did belong here, that even though I was an immigrant, I was still welcome here. And it felt very significant to me, maybe more than I thought it would be, because I've always felt a little bit like an outsider ever since I was a child. So it felt like a vote of welcome to me. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because it was given to me for helping to welcome other people. But it was a tremendous honor and, really, really inspired by it. I don't like the E. I don't like the fact it's the officer of the British Empire. I don't think overall I'm a fan of Empire, but I'm willing to take the award on behalf of others if it helps more people to feel welcome here. It was very similar to many of your listeners. I was nervous about becoming a foster parent. We had three children. So at the time we were considering it, our children were 6, 5, and 4. And I thought we were busy enough. Thank you very much. But my wife, she has such a big heart. She helped me understand some of the challenges and some of the opportunities. Some friends of mine in their 60s became foster parents for the first time. And I thought if they could do that in their 60s, maybe we should consider doing this in our 30s. And for me, my faith was an important part of it too. I come from a Christian family, and this idea of hospitality is very important to us. I would say it's probably the most challenging thing that our family has done, and you need to go in with your eyes open. The children that you will be caring for have had terrible things happen to them, things that no child should have had to experience: physical abuse, sexual abuse. They've experienced many extreme poverty. It's a huge set of challenges, but it's the most wonderful and fulfilling thing that our family has done. I was just having lunch with my family, and 3 out of 4 of the children present are fostered or adopted. And it's such a joy to see them flourish. They came to our household. One of them couldn't really speak. She had all sorts of delays in her learning. But at lunchtime, she was making jokes and laughing. And I thought, wow, what a privilege to play some part in her development. So I would love to see more of your listeners come forward. There is a lack of diversity in fostering and adoption. There's a particular challenge for Black children. They are the most overrepresented in the care system, and they're the least likely to get adopted. And I think the color of a child's skin should not determine their life chances. So the more people from a diversity of backgrounds that come forward, it's so good for the children to have someone that looks like them, understands their culture and their background. This is a big deal for them.